Ding, we're home. That's the doorbell, Susan, that tells us I'm in my own house.
Oh, that's good.
What a charm, right? That's what I always laugh at the beginning of these, because I'm like, that's the charm of like YouTube and Zoom, is that they are, it's like, ding, I'm home, in case you forgot where you left yourself or something. It's absolutely so charming. Okay. Oh my gosh, you guys, welcome to today's eat and greet, where I don't even have any information. I have to just be pumped and tell you Susan Miller's here with us. I'm like fangirling a little bit over here, because I know I started learning some astrology with Susan Miller, right? Like, so I'm pumped that you're here, and I'm going to try and act like
I'm thrilled that you invited me. Thank you.
Oh gosh, yeah, you're so welcome. And you guys, we were starting to have a little conversation before, and it's juicy. This is great because you get to see the string of how everything's setting us up to move where we're going. So before we get going here, Susan, let me do a little house cleaning here. All right, guys. The September videos are on their way up and out. The autumn equinox gifts will be out as well. All of that will be available. You can just watch the homepage of the channel. The rest of the eat and greets that have happened before, the playlist is in the description box down below. And the ones coming next, you'll be able to find in that playlist as well. So that's all I got. We have to just get into this because there's so much good stuff to talk about. So Susan, welcome.
Thank you. This is exciting. You're in Colorado. I'm in New York City, Manhattan, and yet we're close. It's like we're sitting opposite each other in a restaurant.
I know. Good thing we're doing an eat and greet. And this is where it's like, despite all of the weird things that happen with technology, especially since Uranus has gone retrograde, it's like, thank God for technology so we can bridge these gaps.
I just love technology. I love learning new things and trying new things. It's fun, and it's going to be coming at us at quite a pace now from now on.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And coming into 2021, which is the timing that I have been really excited about. I know everybody was huge on 2020, and I feel like for me, 2020 was when like the thing happened. But then in 2021 is when we get to adjust and work out the thing that happened, So I'm pumped that we're going to talk about this, but talking about Saturn and Uranus squaring a few times and getting hit by some nice T-square action in 2021, we do have to step back and look into 2020, and here we are.
Well, Saturn rules all things that are valuable from the past, and Uranus is all about the future, and he looks at what's no longer relevant or what's outworn and kind of shabby, and he sweeps it away instantly in a blink of an eye. He has absolutely no patience, but he helps you rebuild. So I think, now this is just my opinion, next year will be all about what's valuable from the past that we want to keep, and what do we need to innovate for the future. And I think that'll be pretty exciting, because the world will have a new look. And I think we're ready for it. I have a feeling we're going to be looking back at all the years that have come before, say in the 2000s, and say, gee, they look a little antiquated now. We've moved beyond
that old thing.
Yeah. And, I was thinking about this virus. It's the first time the whole world is experiencing the exact same experience. That's never happened in my lifetime, where everybody's experiencing the same thing at once. And I write for Vogue Japan, W Korea, Tempo in Turkey, Claudia Brazil, Amica Italy, Esmo to Spain, Vogue Germany, Vogue China, and not Vogue Germany anymore. They didn't want to do the translations. But when I talk to my editors, and they tell me, like my editors in Brazil or even in Italy, they're having a second wave now. So this is a virus that we have to respect. Even if you don't know anyone who's ever gotten sick, this thing has an intelligence built in. So we have to be careful. But I think, this has been caused by Jupiter-Pluto. Now, usually Jupiter-Pluto getting together once every 13 years is exciting, and it brings usually prosperity and
Sure.
big money deals. Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, they were born during a Jupiter-Pluto year. So was, I think Steve Jobs was too. But the big money deals that we saw here in America was the $1 trillion stimulus packages. We never saw packages that big. And I have a feeling and one more is coming in October.
I do too. Yes.
Yeah, right
Yes.
before, because they met April 4th, and that's when New York was suffering so much. I mean, none of us forgot that, especially Governor Cuomo. That's why he's been very strict about what we can and can't do. And now we have the lowest, but so they met April 4th, then they met again at the end of June 29th. But when Jupiter and Pluto met, they were retrograde. And here's where I was wrong. I thought when they were retrograde, they're a little sleepy and they're not going to be strong and they're not going to have a big punch. Well, they sure did in Florida and the whole Southwest, you know, the whole bottom of the United States up through California.
Sure.
They've been suffering terribly ever since that conjunction because they felt it in July. Now we have one more conjunction, and that's November 12th. And I feel that you feel it 6 weeks ahead. Mm-hmm. So we have to be super careful in October. And Jupiter goes direct September 12th. Pluto goes direct October 4th. So they're well rested.
Yeah, and they're ready to do this.
And you know, I mean, they were happy to be together. And when they first met in April, they had dinner and they said, oh, what can I do? And Pluto said, I've got this virus. And Jupiter, you expand everything you touch. Would you help me with this virus? So little drunk Jupiter said, oh, sure. Jupiter, what were you thinking? What were you thinking? You know, but so here Jupiter's helping his friend. Now, you know, the New York Times said Susan Miller didn't predict the pandemic. Well, they meet every 13 years. I didn't look for a pandemic. Sure. And let's say I did. You know, if you look in Billings and Bills, maybe Rex Bills, you know, it shows you what planet rules every part of life. Let's say I saw it. Am I going to tell people 45 million people are going to be out of work? You're probably going to lose your job. You're going to wonder how you're going to pay your rent. Your relatives will be in the hospital.
Right.
I mean, am I going to, what?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the doctors and nurses aren't going to have enough, you know, equipment to take care of you. And they're going to keep family members in the hallway. Am I going to say that?
Yeah, we don't do that. There's an ethical standard that does come around in saying things.
And also, well, you might say as devil advocate, people could save. Well, according to news reports that we're getting, most people are hand to mouth. Anyway. They have children, they have them in either public or private schools, or the children need clothes every 5 minutes. They always want to eat. Turns out they'll say, what's for dinner? And I'm like, you already ate lunch. I remember when they were little, we're hungry again. I'm like, okay. Mm-hmm. But, you know, my point is people, it's not that easy for many people to save. And, you know, especially when they have children. And, you know, when you get older, it gets easier because then they're grown. You've gotten them through college, and then it gets easier. But during those years, it's tough. Yeah. And, you know, so
you need everything you can to just.
But even the CIA and the World Health Organization didn't quite know that this would happen. And a lot depends on our response. Mm-hmm. Now, I have something to tell you that will inspire you so much. You know, when this hit, I started reading about the Spanish flu, which is very similar to what we're going through here in New York. But I also went back to the plague, the Black Plague, the bubonic plague. And it would roll through all of Europe. But in England, let's focus on England, it would roll through, but they didn't know what was causing it. So they couldn't stop it. Much later, like 100 years later, they found out it was caused by the fleas on the hairs of rats. Okay, we'll leave that alone. But they didn't know what was causing it. So it would roll through and then it would disappear and then it would keep coming back. There was a couple, and this is on the History Channel website, so I'm not making this up. There was a couple who heard it was coming. They bought so much food, you know, and canned and, you know, really so they could get through a long time. They shut the doors and the windows. They pulled down the shutters. They closed the drapes. They wouldn't let anybody in. They had already lost 2 children to the plague in the past, but they had a newborn baby boy, little baby William, and they were determined that they weren't going to lose that child. Well, they were successful. Little baby William grew up to be William Shakespeare. And wait, there's more. So I did his chart. He has all these planets in Gemini. He had to be a writer. So he's writing these plays, and he's really enjoying seeing the audience reaction and how they're loving them. And he's just so happy that people are enjoying his plays. So he starts producing plays. He helps the director. He helps the casting agent. And then he gets even his own theater, the Globe Theater. Half of it's outside, half of it's inside. And he's having such a good time with it. But the British government said, wait a minute. We've noticed that every time people gather together, when that plague is rolling through, we get a big outbreak and people die. So we're closing all the theaters. Now that was a big deal in London because the theaters were a big industry. And half of his theater was outside, which was safer than inside. But they said, no, we're closing yours too. Everybody, you got it. I don't think they used the word quarantine. They might have. I didn't see that word, but everybody had to stay home. So now Shakespeare had to go home. He's like, I can't produce any plays and I have to make a living. I guess I better write. In the year between 1605 and 1606, he wrote Antony and Cleopatra, King Lear, and my favorite, Macbeth. Doesn't that inspire you?
It does.
We should use the time home productively.
Use it productively. We are so stimulated, I think, right now in the space that is trying to.
But from within.
Yes.
From within.
Yes.
Usually we get the stimulation from the outside, but now it's the opposite.
Which is interesting because in the being pushed back home, even then looking at the story of Shakespeare and looking at us now, when you're pushed back in, it gets real quiet. So what's also there is a permeating self-doubt and fear that can also
some people have it. Some people. But then we have to help each other.
Yes.
We have to keep an eye on our friends, our relatives.
Yes.
I think, you know, we have the grand conjunction coming in December, and that is the meeting of Jupiter and Saturn, which is very exciting. It happens once every 20 years. The last time they met in Taurus. It was May 2000. And every time they've met for 200 years, except for a little exception, and I'll get to that in a minute, the past 200 years, they always met in Earth signs. You say that's crazy. Yeah, but that's because the universe runs like a train station, very mathematically. So for 200 years, they met in Taurus, Virgo, Capricorn, Taurus, Virgo, Capricorn, over and over and over and over. And over the past 200 years, what we accomplished was cathedrals, skyscrapers, roads, bridges, tunnels, the assembly line, the Industrial Revolution, the railroad tracks were laid down. Everything we have now was put together in the past 200 years, because before that, things were pretty primitive. You just think of the United States. I think we're about 245 years old. I'd have to look it up, but we're pretty young. There was wilderness here. There were pilgrims and Indians, you know. So all of this was accomplished in the past 200 years. Now this year, We walk across the transom to a brand new life when Jupiter and Saturn meet in Aquarius. And the sign that Jupiter and Saturn meet in affects fashion and theater and art and poetry and politics and government and the thinking and the orientation of a society. And this is global. Yeah. And Aquarius loves to work in groups. And you're already seeing signs of what's coming because Saturn, oh, it's so funny. He's like a little baseball player. He runs to first place. He runs to second base. He runs to third base, then to fourth place. He's home and he keeps running to first base. And the universe said, Saturn, where are you? You're in Aquarius. Well, I thought I was supposed to be. No, you have to come back and finish your tour of duty in Capricorn. Come back. So he's coming back to Aquarius. He's there. He's in Capricorn, I should say. And he has to finish. He will finish by December 17th. And Jupiter will finish by the 19th. And they're meeting each other to form this new society. But let's think of Saturn in Aquarius from March 20th to July 1st. That happened already this year. Well, where were we? We were all home alone. Aquarius likes to be alone. They like to be different. They love technology. They're so happy when they're in a computer store or coming home with a new product, a new phone, a new tablet, a new something. And we all learned to speak to each other technologically and even learn technologically. Now, I know some kids, it's hard, and other kids took to it easily, but it's something that will be coming, and we have to be sure that all children have the devices they need. You know, and I think government is working on that. And I'm sure Apple is working with that because they've always prioritized children. So we are looking at a period where we're going into a time when there's going to be huge medical advances. And we have the CRISPR machine in Switzerland, and it's going to be able to take out the parts of your genes that you were born with that hurt you, you know, things that give you diseases that people have suffered through because it's in their genes.
Sure.
And that's a really good thing. But there's the other side. You know, we can have designer babies, and governments are absolutely so slow when it comes to the internet and new technology about making laws. And they're going to have to like move that along a little because we don't want all little children to look alike, you know. So, you know, we want diversity, and we want girls and we want boys. We don't want too much of one or the other, you know. So they'll work on that, and but especially the designer children, they have to work on that. But the thing about Aquarius is it's not what you bought that matters. It's what you know and what you contribute. And you know, on Instagram, there's an awful lot of look at my new bag or look at my new bracelet. That is going to move away. It's look what I did, look what I contributed, or look where I went. Travel will become big again. So everyone out there thinking, am I ever going to get on an airplane again? You will, and it will be safe.
Yeah, Aquarius won't have it any other way. They have got to get into the sky.
Oh my gosh, I love to. Do you know when I'm on an airplane and the captain says, "Well, we're going to land now," I'm like, couldn't we twirl around?
A couple other laps.
I work really well on airplanes. You know, I write a lot. You know, I write Astrology Zone, and you know, there's never enough time in a day to write as much as I write. And I write my app, and I write columns for fashion magazines abroad. So, you know, I can write anywhere, in an airport, on an airplane, anywhere, in a cafe. People say it's so noisy where you are. How can you write? I'm like, what? There's no noise.
No,
it's quiet.
I
don't
like
hear
it.
it.
I
But
like the
anyway,
noise.
now remember I mentioned that there was one aberration. It was in 1980. And Jupiter and Saturn met in Libra.
Yeah.
Now the universe has a way of giving us a little preview, a little peephole. And I said, why does it do that? The universe doesn't make mistakes. And that was 40 years ago. But wait a minute. The people who were born in 1980 are 40 years old. Now there's always a plus or minus of 5. Those are the babies that are going to lead us into the new world order.
Susan, you're speaking the truth.
1975 to 1985, because that's the plus or minus 5 years on either side. This is so exciting.
It is.
I love it. I love it.
Yes. And we got the World Wide Web. We got entrance into how we socially connect differently than we ever have in the world.
Well, social media, I started my website in 1995. So this December 14th, right on the eclipse, a solar eclipse, my website will be 25 years old. But someone said something to me that was it stuck with me. He said, first there was the Gutenberg Bible, people could read. Then there was radio, they could hear, and they could also, they already could read. But then there was television. You could read, see, and hear. But now we have the internet. We can respond. Mm-hmm. It closes the box. It is a leap for civilization. And we're alive during this period. This is so exciting.
Yes. And I know that some people use the phrase, just whether it's personal or on the global stage, they say New World Order. And I think that people assign that to something very negative. But because we can connect different people who maybe wouldn't have been your friends or wouldn't have been your teachers or wouldn't have been your company are going to become available to be a part of the new connection.
And we're more enlightened. I was walking around Lexington Avenue a few months ago and I'm saying, what are we blind to? What are we not seeing? Because every once in a while we get this awakening. And I thought, and we had an awakening with the Me Too. And that was social movement that moved so fast. Yeah. And different things. But then when Mr. George Floyd died, that was a huge awakening. And his funerals were on the June 5th eclipse.
Yeah.
When you have an eclipse, you can never go backwards. Whatever you learn on an eclipse, you have to go forward. I always say in my column, if you lose your job or your boyfriend breaks up with you or your girlfriend breaks up with you, don't beg to have it changed because it's not going to happen. With an eclipse, it's final and non-negotiable. So I was thinking, Black Lives Matter happened on that eclipse. We're really going to have a new awareness. And I think a lot of people, me included, had no idea of the suffering, the depth of suffering. I had no idea. I didn't know policemen put the knee on the neck and all this stuff. Where did that come from? But also there was deeper suffering of the whole Black community on other reasons. And white people were afraid to ask because they didn't want to upset the person or didn't know how to approach it or didn't know how to put the words together. And then that broke open. And we're all having conversations in our homes, with our family, with our friends, having dinner with friends and talking it out. It's such a good thing because it's cleaning it out. It's coming to the surface. That's the only way things don't fester. And people say, well, they had the demonstrations. Will it change anything? Yes. Let me give you a visual. When you have an eclipse, any eclipse, if it's touching the degrees in your chart, you're on one side of the ravine and you have to walk to the other side of the ravine, the other border, but you look down, oh boy, is really far. and it's a creek with rushing water and big rocks and trees, and and you're walking across this bamboo bridge, but it's a walk bridge. It has handles, like a little bridge, but it's made out of bamboo, so it's creaking. You're like, oh boy, this is, I don't know if this was such a good idea. This is scary. You walk across the bridge, you get on the other side, your feet are on the other side, and you're like, whew, and you're safe. You walk in a little bit, and then you hear a noise, and you look, and that bridge falls in the water.
Yeah.
There's no way back. The only way is forward. Now, let's say your landlord sells the building and you have to move, but you don't have many choices. Let's say you have to take a place that's dark and expensive and you really don't like it. You can continue to change as you move forward, but you can't tell your landlord to keep you there another 2 years. You know what I mean? So there's no going back, only forward. That's why I'm very optimistic about the changes that are coming.
Yeah.
And yeah, it'll be an adjustment. Some people adjust easier than others.
Sure.
We all know them. Actually, I have this theory. You tell me if I'm right. Think of your friends. Some people are living in the past. Some are living right now, and some are very focused on the future. Have you noticed that we all seem to have a time frame?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I'm always about the future, but I try to, of course, make every day productive.
Sure.
You don't have a limited life, so you want to use it.
Sure. Well, it's interesting because Uranus and Taurus right now is really showing us where people are focusing, because Uranus shaking that mountain that's Taurus over there is taking support beams from underneath us. So all of the things we've been able to stand on, the structures, have wiggled loose. So now it's like, where are my eyes? Where are my...
Well, the last time we had Uranus and Taurus, we had the Great Depression, and they're calling. I think we will go through 2 tough years.
I do too.
But you know what? When we were little, when my family was little, we were poor. We used to bang on the pipes for heat till the landlord send us some heat. But we had fun. We didn't have a lot of money, but we were so close. My mother and father, my sister and I, and we found ways to have fun all the time. You don't always need a lot of money. No, we didn't go on vacation. We went to my grandmother's house in the country. That was our vacation. But she did live on a mountaintop with Grandpa, and it was beautiful. But I always wanted to be back in New York when I was little. I'm such a city kid. But, it was good for me to be up there and spend time with my grandparents and my mother. And my father would come up on weekends. But, sometimes you're afraid of anything new. Go with it. Just go with it. Have an open mind, because it can be better. A lot of people are worried, like our president, that the mix of our culture is changing. There are going to be more Latinas, more Blacks, it'll be a different proportion. Well, I say maybe it'll be better.
Right.
Immigrants have always added so much to our culture. Why is some people thinking it's going to be worse? It's not.
Yeah.
It's good for us.
Well, and we got a taste of that, I think, as well in April. Both the Sun and Mercury got to come have conversation with Uranus, and it was this stimulation, I think, in the depths of new ideas. But it was like, well, hold on, I've got this big idea, but where does it fit in our structure yet? Hold on, that's still being taken down so that this idea has space to fit. And I think it had a lot to do around culture. My God, even with George Floyd, you saw how fast things happen.
So fast.
China.
It was a tipping point where people were saying enough.
Yes. And all over the world,
it
was a response. We responded to the pandemic. We responded to new cultural, take care of everybody kind of ideas.
Well, we have to worry about the poor nations who can't afford the vaccine. Because the poor nations are going to be visiting the other nations and infecting us again. Everybody has to get the vaccine. It cannot be just the wealthy countries. And I've been reading about that. And it's something you don't think about until it's brought to your attention. And you're like, whoa, that's true. But they're ahead of us. Now, what's interesting about Aquarius? Aquarius works in groups and they help each other. It's a humanitarian vibration. It's very different from Capricorn, which is more like status and money. And, Mayor Bloomberg here in New York has a foundation. He gave us so much money so we could all be tested whenever we felt like it. Whenever we want to, we can get a test because he gave the money and we didn't have to worry about it. But next year, the governments are going to be tapped out because they're printing money in the basement. We're well into extreme deficit spending. And the head of the Federal Reserve Bank was on 60 Minutes. And he said, well, I can loan money, but I can't print money. I mean, I have to pay it back. So we will have to pay it back over the next 12 years and there'll be higher taxes. Well, I thought, well, thank you for telling us the truth. Nobody else does, and we need to know that. I don't always want happy talk. I want the truth.
Sure. Well, and we think about this too, because Uranus in Taurus is different money, different economy. The euro got formed the last time we saw Saturn in Aquarius. That happened under there. So new money, new currency.
And also encrypted currencies and Bitcoin, all that. I thought that's where it was going to go, but I didn't expect the whole bottom to fall out of our society swiftly because Uranus goes swiftly. And I think he wants us to see, you think it's all so solid. Well, it isn't. So don't put too much, you do have to have some reserve. That was one of the lessons.
Sure.
And I was surprised that restaurants don't have more reserve.
And I think they were surprised they don't have more reserve.
I was surprised. But if you told me half the restaurants in my city would disappear, I said, that's impossible. How could that happen? That's never happened in my lifetime. And the big department stores would start folding and everything was falling like dominoes, but it's a truth that we have to face and then rebuild. But like Governor Cuomo said to us, we love him here in New York, that we're now quarantined and the sky is very blue. The earth is healing its crust. We have no pollution right now because there's no cars on the road and there's no airplanes flying. We have a chance to decide what we want next. And we should take this time to say, what is it we want? And then work toward that. And I think many of us have just thought, well, it is what it is and we can't change it. And he pointed out we can change it. We can make it better. And that's a very hopeful thing. And thinking about the environment and healing it. And in New York, you can walk down any street and hear all these birds right now. And I love birds. I love the sound of birds. When I get a massage, I always want the lady to put on the sound of the little tweeting birds. I just love birds. And, and I think about that. How can we make it better? And we can all work together, and I think the pandemic has shown us that we want to help each other. We will help someone who's a different, a Republican or a Democrat. We'll give the plasma. We want to help that person stay alive. So it's reminding us what binds us together is stronger than what separates us. Sure. And so it's had some very good sides too. Now look, some people lost a loved one and death is the hardest thing to deal with. I lost my mother 7.5 years ago. I'm still not over it. It hurts every time I think about her and that I don't have her anymore. I miss her so much. So if someone listening has lost someone, I am so sympathetic to what you're going through. And other people have lost their job. I know people who've lost their job, and trying to figure out how they can use the skills that they had in one industry and transfer them. And they are transferable.
They are.
They are.
Taurus told you that. Taurus doesn't really want to invent anything new. So it's like, I just need you to innovate whatever was already here. You know what I mean? Which is going to be, I think all of these are really important concepts when we come back to looking at Uranus and Saturn squaring, I think, Susan, because
it's going to force us.
It's going to force us.
What stays, what goes? What are we going to keep from the past that is valuable for the future? What's still relevant?
Yeah. And don't resist. I think when you come into contact with either one of those, resistance is very futile, and under their squares, and they touch down with each other 3 different times. We have these opportunities that it's like,
the first is in February, right? The beginning of February, or the 20th. I'm trying to remember when that was. I'm writing
Valentine's Day. We're getting a Valentine's Day square, so don't resist change, is what I'm saying. June, and
it depends on where Uranus and Saturn are in your chart.
Sure.
But, my children, out of the mouths of babes, when I've gone through some real cliffhangers, with work and business, there are times when I wasn't sure I could keep my website. I mean, things kept changing in the very beginning. And my little one said, Mommy, you always said change is good. Change is good. Find the good in the change.
Sure.
And sometimes you need your children to remind you what you've taught them.
Sure. Well, because there will be, I think underneath this, there's still going to be, at that different vibration, social unrest does happen under this. And I think it's that space of, do we keep what's traditional? Do we move what's who's right? Who's got the right answer? And these nodes, people get real self-righteous.
Well, it's going into Gemini and Sagittarius. So it's the whole truth and nothing but the truth. The next eclipse is November 30th and then December 14th. And then they're going to continue in Gemini, Sagittarius. So those are the signs that will feel some changes. But the ones coming at the end of this year are benign compared to what we've had in June and July. Those were doozies. Summer we've had.
Those were doozies. Yeah. Well, and in it too, because Uranus brings these like just kind of quirky ideas out of nowhere. It's going to be like the outliers.
And some of them will seem weird.
Yes. And it's like, what is that? And here we go. The 80s babies to the rescue.
Yeah.
It's our time to shine, friends.
I saw one example. I always like to watch the 6:30 news, especially on ABC. I just love it. And when I'm not home, I tape it. And I'm sitting watching the news, and there was a story about how the farmers are letting their crops die because they don't have enough money to pick it. Because one farmer said, I have three miles of crops, one for restaurants, one for hotels, and they're not buying, and one for supermarkets, which is buying. But that's, 2/3 I just have to let go. And I'm throwing out the milk. I don't have the money. Well, there was another man somewhere else in America watching this broadcast. He's like, this is terrible. We all see the lines of people waiting for food in the food banks. We can't have this. I have a trucking company. I have to do something.
Yes.
So he wrote to all his friends, if I can get the food, would you drive the truck for free to poor neighborhoods? I'll talk to FEMA. I'll find out where they are. Everybody said yes, absolutely. I don't care how many days I have to be on the road. I will drive the trucks that you have. So then he thought, well, I have to get money. So he wrote to other people. Could you donate something? He got much more money than he expected, paid the farmers, and 3 weeks ago delivered all the food. Yeah. And he said, look, I'm not a hero. I'm just a template. You could copy what I'm doing. There has to be other people out there that can do this. And we have to take care of the people who are hungry. We can't have this. It's America. And I thought, this is the spirit of Aquarius, not waiting for the government to do something, because that takes too long. If you're hungry, at 6 o'clock or your children are hungry, you got to do something. You can't wait 3 months for a stimulus package, and it's people helping people. You will see next year with all that Aquarian influence next year. And I think people will roll up their sleeves. Some people are busy. They're running a company and maybe they can only write a check. Other people can say, well, I can volunteer on Saturdays, or I can volunteer for my church on Thursdays, whatever it is, or I can give canned food, whatever it is. I think if everybody just did a little, it would be a lot.
Absolutely. I think there's a big opening to bridge the divide that's here. Something else I was thinking about, because it is going to be such change of ideas. I think that what we've started to see in March up until now are these people who have really different ideas than their families had. And they are afraid to say it. You know what I mean? Kind of having that because there's that, no, this is the right answer. So that person's like not saying, well, I have some different ideas about how to do this now. And I think
that's healthy.
Yes. Good.
Some people say to me, well, I'm a Republican or I'm a Democrat because my family always has been that.
Right.
Well, maybe it's good to be a little rebel and just listen to the convention on the other side. Just listen, just try it out or read a different newspaper or whatever,
Yeah, those nodes have put us all in the position to say, well, why do you believe what you believe? Like, is it because somebody told you believe that, or why? I mean, if you believe that, that's fine. But why? Yeah. Can you stand for that? And when people are going to have
sometimes you get a pat slogan. Like, well, can we go a little deeper? Yeah. Can you explain it a little better? Yeah,
absolutely. So other things I think we see under these two particular squares as they come about, certainly I think about, there I was in college enjoying my little music online, Napster. Like Napster was my favorite thing because you could download music and I was over there listening to everybody's music, but there were no laws around that yet. So as Saturn comes, we have virtual laws.
And Napster disappeared.
Yeah, they had to. It was legal. They were breaking the law. They were breaking laws that we hadn't really set laws for.
Yeah.
Right. And so cybersecurity and people.
Oh, you don't know what I went through. I mean, in the beginning of my website, people would steal my federal trademark, and they were big companies that their names. And one of them said to me, how many lawyers do you have, Susan? 2, 1, 2. We have 400. Eventually you'll win. But in the meantime, we'll make so much money on you. And he started laughing at me. And I thought, I wish I had this on tape.
Sure.
It was horrible. Mm-hmm. I don't know. It was like riding a bucking bronco. But yet there were other parts that were really exciting. Sure. Like being in a covered wagon going west to Silicon Valley. I started on Time Warner's website, Pathfinder, free AOL. And then I had nowhere to go. I was hanging off a cliff. My site was 3 years old. And Apple made the introduction to InfoSeek, which became Disney, Go.com, ABC News. So my site moved there. So for 3 years, I was on Time Warner and on Disney. I never sold parts of my company. They just paid me a licensing fee. Mm-hmm. And then Disney said, we shouldn't be in the internet business. We think it's a fad. And I'm like, and ABC said, we told them not to touch us. We're a 125-year-old company. We're going to have an internet site. But they closed Go.com and I had nowhere to go. So I jumped off a cliff and I started my own business and hired people. And I had no idea how I was going to pay them. But then Barnes & Noble came in and gave me a 5-book contract. And that's how I paid my people. You just sometimes have, if you love the business you have, you will crawl through a straw to make it work. The universe will keep testing you. How much do you love America? How much do you love your family? How much do you love your children? What are you willing to do for them? How much do you love the city you're in? It constantly tests you in different ways. It's like cutting crosswise and all different ways.
Your depth. It's digging into your depth of like, what are you doing? What are you motivated about? What do you burn for on this planet? What do you burn for before you get out of here?
everything goes towards strength. So if you lose your job because the company is having trouble, that's a weak thing. And you will find a better job in a stronger company. The universe keeps separating the wheat from the shaft, and everything goes towards strength. That's why everyone listening should say, I have to think about my talents and go with that. I always say that there are 8 million people in New York and all of them want my job.
Yeah.
So every day I have to do the best I can. And, you feel that competitive pressure, but it makes you better. And, I've met a lot of millennials and I feel sorry for them because they came out of college in 2008 and we had the big crash. And now, only 11 or 12 years later, we have a depression. So they think the world is a terribly dangerous place. They have a kind of skewed perspective.
Sure.
It is a dangerous place, but not to the level that they're experiencing it.
Yeah,
and many of them don't know what should I do with my life? What should I do for my career? You look at the ascendant. The ascendant picks the profession. But the midheaven, where the 12 is on a clock, that's your ultimate contribution to the world. And as you get older, that's what you offer, the lasting contribution to the world. So have your chart done by an astrologer who has been accredited or who knows what they're doing. Read their writing, go to the clubs, the National Council for Geocosmic Research all over America, or the International Society for Astrologic Research. That's where I got my accreditation. They're worldwide. Or the American Federation of Astrologers in Tempe, Arizona. They all have websites, and you can find a good astrologer. The big problem I'm facing right now is a lot of people are saying, oh, astrology is hot. I'm an astrologer. And they're not. And
Sure,
people come to me worried, saying, oh, this is what she told me. And I'm like, no.
We just covered this on this channel, actually, about it.
You did?
Yes.
I love you with all my heart for covering it, because nobody is.
No, if this is the thing you're wanting to do it, let's be serious and bring this thing forward. These are people's lives. This is serious stuff.
My mother said to me, I'm not teaching you astrology. I was born with a birth defect. I was in and out of hospitals my whole childhood. But at 14, it reached epic proportions. I got a terrible attack and they had to go in and they operated on me and they couldn't get out. I was bleeding so much. In my life, I've had 40 blood transfusions. That's why I always believe in giving blood, because I have 40 people to thank. I don't know who they are, who saved my life.
Sure.
But I was paralyzed from the knee down. And I didn't know if I'd ever walk without a big metal brace and crutches. And I had to be homeschooled. I was homeschooled during the whole time in the hospital. People said, oh, you could take the year off. No, I had skipped the 8th grade. That was hard. I'm not going, no, I'm going to study. It'll help me keep my mind active. And then the Board of Ed works with kids like this and sent a teacher to my house for 2 hours every week. And I took my PSAT and my SAT and my Regents exams. And then I went to NYU. So I actually went from junior high to college. But during this period, and I majored in business because my father said I'd always work if I majored in business, being the practical Italian father I had. I wanted to know if there was going to be a happy ending, because those 2.5 years I was home, I was going to the hospital every day for outpatient physical therapy, but they put electrodes on me and keep everything, otherwise I'd look like I had a polio leg. And I kept saying to my mother, I want to learn astrology. And she was a scholar. She never had consultations. She was a scholar and was always reading. And she said, no. You're just going to think you know what you're doing after a year. And you're going to read for your friends. I said, I don't have any friends. Do you see anybody?
Work that out
I'm not
for
in
me.
school. I don't know anybody. And I was okay. I was the kind of kid who who liked to sew and do things alone, but I was in bed, so I would read. And she would go to the library and get me all these books. And finally, after a year of pleading, she said, all right, but you have to study with me 12 years and not a moment less. And I'm going to tell you when you're ready. Mm-hmm. And, you know, right before she died, she told me when I was ready, but right before she died, I went over to see her. I would always go over because she was in my neighborhood and she was reading something. So I ran around her favorite chair and gave her a kiss and a hug. I said, what are you reading, little mom? You're reading Gemini Astrology Zone, but you know what's going to happen. Why are you reading that? And she looked at me and she said, I want to see what you're saying. I said, oh, well, how am I doing, little mom? And with a twinkle in her eye, she said, you could continue. You could continue. I loved her so much. She was such a mentor because she didn't just talk about the aspects. She talked about self-undoing and how people sometimes, I said, that's ridiculous. Nobody would hurt themselves. No one would do something to mess up their lives. She laughed and she said, well, actually, it happens all the time.
It happens all the time.
And you have to look at that. But always, you know, be kind. And I remember once after I published Planets and Possibilities, I said, Mom, I got a letter from a prisoner in jail. They wrote to my publisher. She said, I hope you wrote back. Even that poor devil needs some hope. That was her exact words. I said, I did write back. I think I'm so much like her. And, you know, because I was so sick and I couldn't walk, she was with me all the time. I realized God kind of set that up that way.
Oh, yeah.
I needed her. I had to learn how to walk again. So, and she was my cheerleader. And, you know, when you go visit a patient in the hospital, first of all, always wear a pretty color. Don't wear black. She always wore pastels or something very pretty. And she never talk about how's the pain. Say, oh, Susie, this is what she said to me. When you get well, you'll be able to travel for the first time in your life and not worry you'll get an attack. And you'll have pretty dresses in the closet. And you'll have so many shoes, you'll line them against the wall. You know, she's talking to a 14-year-old who loves shoes, you know. And you'll say, which shoes will I wear today? And which pretty dress will I have? And she painted this picture. And that's what makes a patient have the courage to learn how to walk again and to go through the hard process of physical therapy. And I walk. People think, they look at me and they're like, you're making this up. But no, I'm not.
Yeah, but it's the same concept, I think, beautifully illustrated and carried over into a consultation, because this is just real life that we're going through. And sometimes it's the heavy and the slow. And so you should be able to leave informed with some strategy, but with a little bit of hope as well.
Yes, you have. Well, the chart always shows you where the good is happening. Yes. And you could wedge that door open a little bit more.
Take the mustard seed, just a mustard seed. And I promise you can survive.
You know, if I see friends are good for you, talk to your friends, talk to more people, tell them what's going on here. And one of them is going to have the answer for you.
Yeah.
Or, you know, it just depends on where it is in the chart. But that's why I write so much, because I always feel maybe that person is looking for one specific thing. It's funny, like I'll send like Libra off to my editor. I start with Aries, I end with Pisces, and you know, each one takes me 7 hours to write. So Edward starts working on that. He's my editor-in-chief, and there are 3 editors under him, one from CNBC, one from Harper's Bazaar, one from about.com. They're different people, and they report to him, you know, so he keeps it all organized, and he makes sure my voice stays my voice because he knows it so well. But you know, you have to be complete, because I'll say, gee, wait a minute, I sent you Libra, but I didn't talk about their apartment and they may have to move. Mm-hmm. Here's a paragraph that I want you to put in between this and this, and I'll put it in red, and I'll copy and paste the other 2 paragraphs so he'll know exactly where it is, and then I'll send the document. And he laughed. He said, I knew you were going to add more. I knew it. I could feel it.
You can. I think the longer you do this and you sit with what those bodies, at least my experience is I go back and I do that. I just am starting to record September and I did Aries and I was like, oop, no. Hold on. I need to talk about this. Let me just go back for just a minute. It's a quick 2-second throw in, but somebody, it's like listening to those people who are coming, that one soul that's showing up.
I say to myself, I'm not writing about Aries.
I'm writing to them.
I am Aries when I'm writing it. I become Aries.
So good.
And I look at the world through their eyes. I'm always careful to write backwards and forwards in time. If your listeners don't know that I write astrologyzone.com, they should take a look at my monthly, because that's what put me on the map. And I go backwards, where you're coming from, because you weren't born a newborn baby this month. And then we look forward. Sure. I have an app, and all right, I'll make a little announcement. It was just approved today by Apple and Google. Now, I have an app on Apple and Google right now, and it's free. It's absolutely free. And at the end of the month, it will change over to the new one. All you have to do is press restore subscription. I'm changing app developers, so they have to do some technical things behind the scenes. They said they would. I'm hoping we're not going to have a little hiccup, but it shouldn't be. And I have my app developer account all set up, but it's brand new. And that's what I've been doing during the pandemic, looking at wireframes. And I'm so touchy feeling. I wanted to be there, but I couldn't be. But I want everyone to at least have the free one. It's, you read it. And then if you want longer, it's $4.99 a month. So Apple takes 30%, so does Google. So you have to, have at least $5 a month. But, and they're worth it. They deserve it. They're wonderful, wonderful retailers. I'm grateful.
If you're looking for that guidance in the palm of your hands too, and feeling like someone solid is giving it to you, it's definitely, those are solid investments, I think, for sure. So I'll make sure there's a link to the app under our session here.
Thank you. Well, Stormy, you said you give away gifts. What are those gifts that you give your listeners?
Oh, no, I have seasonal sessions.
I can give you 25 calendars if you like. It's from this year, but so many people are out of work. We can ship it to you. I have a warehouse that does it for me, and it'll arrive, and you could do a contest if you want.
Oh my God, you guys, we just got free stuff from Susan Miller.
I'll give you 26 so you have one for you.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much for that. And Susan, thank you for coming over and talking with us today.
I'm going to make such a wonderful podcast, because you really get into the things that matter.
And I just get into it. I just get into whatever.
I love it.
I love it. So I'm going to put all of Susan's links to her website, to the app, to just her whole life ever underneath this description box under this video.
Courtney will help you with that. We'll give you bit.ly links to make it easy.
And mad shout outs to Courtney, because she has just been.
She's a little Taurus.
I get it.
And you're a Taurus.
Taurus sisters, right? Yes, absolutely. So you guys, thank you so much for showing up today. Hopefully you enjoyed the talk. Go visit with Susan if you haven't yet. And Susan, thank you again so much for coming over.
Thank you. I have to see you. If I come to Colorado, I'm going to find a way to see you.
All right, you guys, we will see you later on this week, where we are going to have Glenn Mitchell coming over. And tomorrow morning, I think if I'm on the right day, Frank Clifford will be here as well. So lots going on in the eat and greets, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye, everyone.